Hi, I'm Mike Lewis, and this week I've got a couple of short stories to share before we begin our next lesson. Many of you wrote in your papers about how hard it was to mute yourself for 5 hours, and how it made you more sensitive to some of the issues faced by people with disabilities. Back when I was getting my master's degree in education, my professor assigned us to visit 2 local malls in a wheelchair. It was an eye-opening experience for me, in ways both good and bad. I also had to mute myself one time when it was very difficult. I've always been a big Red Wings fan, and I had a ticket to Game 5 in '02 when they won the Stanley Cup. Well, that morning before the game, I showed up to work at Channel 4 News and told my boss, I lost my voice. That's right, I couldn't talk. Don't know why. Obviously, she wasn't happy, because the TV news guy without a voice is pretty worthless. Anyway, I went to the game that night, watched the Wings win the cup, and while everyone at the Joe went crazy, I was jumping up and down silently. I couldn't cheer, couldn't talk to the other fans, but I could still enjoy the moment. And that was an important lesson about people with disabilities. I've put a story in your folder this week that I hope you'll watch. It's about an amazing dog helping someone who has a disability. I used to do some volunteer work with Leader Dogs for the Blind. One day, a couple of the dogs were running full blast down a hill. One of them hit me from behind, sending me flying, and messed up my ankle. I ended up in physical therapy, and that's where I met my wife. The lesson of that story is that good things happen when you help others. We still like Leader Dogs, by the way. This is Kidda, a career change dog that we adopted. Career change is a nice way of saying she flunked out. Too playful to be a leader dog, but she's a great and loyal friend. Let's get back to your papers for a moment. Many of you discovered that your listening skills need some work. As a reporter, I had to develop my own listening skills to do my job well. Listening for facts and sound bites. Listening to see if someone answered my question. Making mental notes to go back to something they said earlier. By the way, here's a little trick to keep someone talking. Silence. Many of you discovered that if you don't say something, the other person will just keep on talking. Anyway, I enjoyed reading your papers over the break, and your writing reminded me to keep working on my own listening, with my family, my wife, my kids, and of course with my students. Listening is a valuable skill. This week, Chapter 8 talks about those skills, those actions that we take that are aimed at achieving our goals, that we can repeat, that occur in a sequence of steps. Just like all of our communication, skills fit into certain contexts, and they may be very specific or general skills. Having a strong vocabulary is an example of a specific skill. Public speaking is another specific skill. Most people are scared to death of that one. You may have heard that more people are afraid of public speaking than they are of dying. In fact, a comedian said that means people at a funeral would rather be in the casket than give the eulogy. A general skill might be managing conflict. You might use several specific skills, such as your vocabulary and public speaking ability, to perfect your general skill of managing conflict. One of the keys here is that we may think we're skilled at something, but it's not up to us to judge our skills. How do others see us? Do they see you as someone with valuable skills? If so, they'll be willing to pay you for those skills. So, what skills can we add to our resume so that we're seen as competent? Chapter 8 talks about attentiveness as one of those, giving people our attention. You all wrote about that in paper 2. The theme I kept reading was how much the people around you appreciated your undivided attention. The key is to support and involve the other person in the conversation. One good way to do that is to ask open-ended questions. That gives people a lot of discretion in how they answer. Tell me more about that is an open-ended question. A closed-ended question gives the person little room to maneuver. What's your major is an example of a closed question. Another important skill is composure, being in control of your communication behavior. Have you ever seen someone lose his composure? If so, you know what I'm talking about. But look at that captain who stayed cool when his plane went down in the Hudson River. He saved a lot of lives and became a hero. Keeping your composure is a valuable skill. Another great skill is coordination, managing the flow of the interaction. If you're in sales, for example, you have to know how to manage the conversation, how to keep it comfortable for your client. The last skill our chapter talks about is expressiveness. I think that's a really important skill, and it's one I try to work on because I'm kind of low-key by nature. Easy for me to slip into a monotone. I remember I had this professor when I was studying Russian. He was like watching a one-man play, and it was great. I looked forward to all of his classes. In TV news, we were always looking for people who could tell stories with energy. In fact, if I could give you something special to take away from our course, that's the secret I'd give you: energy. Whether you're listening, talking, demonstrating, put energy into your communication. When it comes time for you to perform, at a meeting, at work, at home, crank it up a notch or two. I don't mean shout or jump around, unless the context calls for that, but be passionate about the important things in your life. And I submit to you that communication is perhaps the single most important thing in life. So be passionate communicators. But remember that moderation is a virtue. Know when to turn it on and off. Well, now it's time for me to turn it off before I turn you off. You'll find your assignments for week 9 in course documents. And I'll see you here online next week as we continue our study of human communication.